All right, so to open the meeting, this meeting of the Barnstable Infrastructure and Energy Committee is being recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the Town of Barnstable website. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmission must notify the chair. And with that, I will leave it to you, Barry, to start the meeting whenever you see fit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for attending. As I think you may know, Peter Doyle passed away. It's been about 10 days now, I think, since our last meeting. And so I think there are 4 of us remaining on the committee. I think William Beal, I don't know what his status is. Jane could not attend. She's out, I think, off Cape with her family for a couple of weeks. So I appreciate that everybody is attending here, because we need everyone's attendance for a quorum. Maybe before we go into sort of the regular things, I believe I circulated a draft of a tribute that would be made that I'd make on behalf of the committee at the next town council meeting, which is Thursday. If anyone has any comments or suggestions. I think just yesterday an obituary was published in the Cape Cod Times. I can circulate that after the meeting. And I was wondering if I could ask a favor. There is a very small probability I myself may not be able to make the town council meeting. As it turns out, I have a commitment that morning in Boston. It's a very small probability that I would not be able to make it back in time for the town council meeting, but I was wondering if anybody would be willing to step up to make that tribute if I'm unavailable to do it. John, you're on mute. Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm not available that day.
Okay. All right. Well,
out of town too, Barry. I'm sorry.
It's a bad week because I'm not available either.
Okay. Well, I'll just try to be available then.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we miss it, we could do it at the next meeting.
Well, I was going to say, you may even be able to ask Councillor Turkelson. I've seen councillors do things like that before at previous meetings, so maybe she might be a good backup, especially being the liaison.
Yeah,
I will. I'll contact her after the meeting. All right. Unless anyone has anything to say on that, why don't we go to the meeting minutes from the last meeting? I have actually one small suggested change, which I think is on the 3rd page of the minutes, and it's the paragraph right before food waste, and it said additionally Sheingold will be hosting a call with the Falmouth Energy Committee. It's really with a member of the Falmouth Energy Committee. Yeah.
Yep, I'll make that change.
Yeah, and that was the only suggested change I have. Other than that, it looks good, very complete.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, all those in favor with that one change, that the minutes be approved. Okay, it's approved. So let's move on to old business. With regard to green communities, I've set up a meeting with Brian Florence, who's the head of inspectional services, at 9 o'clock on July 11th. And so I think that I would attend with John and Jane. So, and I have a question. And the number of people is important to whether we need a conference room or to do it in Mr. Florence's office. So, this is an informal meeting. Is Kelly? Is this something that notes need to be taken, or it's not really a committee meeting? Just.
I mean, I don't think so, because we didn't take any when we had the food waste meeting, although I mean, I was here.
Right.
I mean, I took notes just because of my role with DPW. But I don't believe you have to have anything formal in place because it's not a committee meeting. It's like you said, sort of an informal meeting that you're having amongst yourselves. And I think knowing that there's only 3 of you in attendance, I think if you had 4, maybe that would be something I would have to ask Anne about. Because that's almost, that would be quorum. That would be almost like a full committee meeting.
Yeah.
But if you're limiting it to, 3 of you participating, then I think you'd be fine.
Okay, why don't we do that? I think he would, the more I take it just from dealing, the more informal it is, the more comfortable he'll probably feel. So why don't we just do that, and I'll follow up with him. So let me see what else. I think at the last meeting, Gordon had suggested that I follow up with Rob Brennan, who's kind of involved with the intersection of climate change and housing. But he's someone who's involved in the, I guess, in the building community. And I did talk to him briefly. We're trying to arrange to get together for lunch, something, pretty informal. But he seemed to be interested in having the discussion. I told him it was specifically we're interested in the stretch code and green communities designation, and that's kind of what the interest of the committee is. So that's that. I talked with Scott Mueller of the Falmouth Energy Committee, who is someone I know from the past. We were both members, and in fact, he was president of a trade association in the energy field, specifically the electric power field. And so, it was an interesting discussion. They've some things that are similar. They're already a green community. Some of the things that they're currently involved in, their discussion with the steamship authority about electrification of both their trucks and buses and ferries. Issues associated with a large solar farm. There was an offshore wind project that proposed to make landfall there, but the company seems to have moved the focus of their attention to Brayton Point or the town of Somerset for where they would make landfall, and they essentially bought the interconnection rights to do that from another company. So that's, so the Falmouth right now is not, does not seem to be the focus of a development there. They have had some very active people on the community and have been there a number of years. There's some internal advocacy with the schools and the building department. So it was good to have the discussion with them. I would say food waste is, is not really something they're focused on. So it was good to have the discussion, but I would say there's not a huge intersection between what we're doing and what they're focusing on. So I did have that discussion. I mentioned before that I have a friend who's active with Habitat for Humanity on Cape Cod, and I'm trying to get the person who's really focused on energy design, which would be more relevant to the stretch code and how they comply with it. And I'm still waiting to get that information. So that's kind of what I've done. I've also reached out to David Anthony regarding where they're at with they were doing two things in terms of the energy plan part of the what would be needed for green communities designation, as well as kind of documenting the other things that we believe the town has already done that would be necessary for green communities designation, but just to document it, which has to do with I think timing of siting decisions on renewable energy projects, and as of right permitting in certain locations. And I think there's one, the other is electric vehicles. And I just noticed that I think for next month, that the town is seeking like a $37,000 appropriation for electric vehicle charging stations at public parking lots in Hyannis. So that, I don't know if that's that may be relevant as well to in terms of electric vehicles. So that's what I've done in terms of green communities, and ask whether anyone else has any update.
And the only other thing that occurs to me, Barry, is just wondering where we stand with Lisa Sullivan.
Well, I've talked to her. Yeah, that's sort of ongoing. But in terms of inviting, I think we've talked about her potentially inviting her to a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, she had suggested that we reach out to, Brian Florence before, kind of early on. So I was thinking about doing that afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's right. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember now. I think that's a better, I think that's a better approach.
Yeah. So again, and I just want to commend Kelly for your detailed note taking, because it was great in terms of reminding me for things to do as a follow up.
Yeah, that last meeting was very in-depth. I know Councilor Kirkelson just watched the recording as well. I told her it would probably be easier than going through all the minutes, so.
Okay, so let's, unless there's anything else, do you want to move on to food waste? Yeah, so I'll just start, and I think I told Brian Florence we put together an agenda for that meeting. And I think the way we put it, the focus would be on the stretch code, but we might also raise some points regarding food waste as well, in terms of the role of his department in that. And so I'll put together an agenda, and I'll circulate it. I might as well circulate it to the whole committee, if that's okay, and get any comments back. Just everybody copy everybody else. And Kelly, is that a good process?
Yep, that works.
Okay. Okay, John and Kelly, do you have any other updates on food waste?
Just on my end, we are still kind of reviewing a larger communications plan for food waste. It's just, there's been a lot going on with permit sales for the transfer station right now. So everyone's kind of been strapped, and Dan's on vacation, but I'm hoping it's on my list for before maternity leave. So definitely by the July 15th meeting to be able to present sort of what we're doing and who will help execute some of that while I'm out if I can't get it all done before then.
Okay. And is Dan, is his health back? To normal?
Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
He's been enjoying a little bit of vacation this last week, so he's good.
Good, that's great. Okay. Terrific.
Good. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I did find the name of a contact who I think will be very helpful in terms of really knowledgeable about the how-tos of composting, because as I understand it, the plan is to put a lot of emphasis on home composting, which makes sense for a lot of reasons. And for many people in town don't use the transfer station, so home composting may really be the best or only option for them. And also, of course, that really helps with, that's the approach that really saves the town money. Because if somebody, if you home compost, then you're really getting it, you're getting it completely out of the waste stream. So a lot of advantage to it. It's a complicated issue and there's some challenges,
Right.
but definitely something that we haven't put emphasis on in the past. And I think it's great that we're emphasizing that going forward.
Yeah, and I think even if you are using the town's facilities, I think one thing we talked at the meeting with Dan is that if you home compost your vegetable and fruit scraps and bring the other food waste to town, you're reducing the volume and therefore reducing the cost of what the town
Yeah.
has.
Yeah, that's really the ideal approach. That'd be
Right.
the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did look, just sort of looked around online, and there are a number of home composting videos out there. So we can get some good ideas from that as well. It is something where there are a lot of different approaches.
Okay, good. Great. All right. Anything else on food waste there?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. All right. So I guess going on to new business on the climate change and climate science communications, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and see what you have to tell us today. I
Thanks,
just want to, before I do that, I just want to have a thought, because I think we talked last time about we do this as a committee and see what application it would have to the town or the town council. But if we are going to put together a workshop on green communities, having a segment of that on climate change, which is really, the underlying reason for, I guess, for adopting the stretch code and getting green communities designation would be, I think, important. And maybe, Chris, that's something that you could contribute to. So anyway, just a thought there, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Barry. Kelly, is there a way I can screen share?
Yes, so I think I can make you a co-host and then that will allow you to screen share. So you should see that option pop up.
Yep. Good
Perfect.
to go. Thank you. So I think we get caught up in, especially my side of the industry, of Wood's whole group, looking at water related issues with climate change. And there are many across Cape Cod, whether it be fluvial flooding, so urbanized or river flooding, and obviously storm surge and rising sea level. I looked at some of the data for heat, and I think that that's something as a committee it's worth focusing on going forward. And I was honestly surprised, even as a scientist that studies this, at the changes that we're seeing locally. So I did some research for Hyannis, the ASOS, so the automated weather station that NOAA put in back in 1998, and we're already seeing some pretty dramatic trends. So this is the number of 90-degree days that we see in Hyannis, which is the closest, most representative location for our data set for the town of Barnstable. back in 1998, we only had one day on average the entire season where the daytime high temperature would climb to 90 degrees. And now if you fast forward to the present day, that number's all the way up to 3. And we see a lot of these trends like in where we have larger data sets like a Boston, where we've seen increasing numbers of days above 90, but over a much greater time scale. And this is pretty dramatic. 1998, the fact that we went from 1 day on average to 3 days. And then for the aging in place population, what's even more concerning, did you see the graphic change? This is now the 70-degree, the nights staying above 75 degrees. We didn't average any up until 2001. Our nights were fairly comfortable. But if you look, as we go from 2001 to 2024, we now have 4 nights where the low temperature drops or stays above 75 degrees. So that's when you start to really introduce a lot of health-related concerns, cardiovascular, pulmonary-related health issues, when you're seeing overnights when the body isn't able to cool. And obviously, a lot of folks here don't have HVAC. Maybe they're just relying on fans or window units. But as a climate scientist and meteorologist, this is a very concerning trend that I think this is kind of our committee, right, of energy and infrastructure is something to really focus on. And as we go and hopefully go towards a green community, this is one of the reasons why it's so important. When homes are better insulated, you're less prone to extreme heat. And you're kind of dealing with the issue at the core. So that was my short update that I did a little bit of research on for the local area. But if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer them. So yeah,
Is that fairly typical of what one would see nationally and internationally?
yes, it is typical. What I'd say is a little more extreme is how quickly it's happening.
Right.
Going from one to 3 is very unusual in just a couple of decades. Like, what is it now? 4 decades. And especially the overnight lows. And that there's a direct connection. The correlation there is our water temperatures. If you looked, it's already in Nantucket Sound, the buoy there is at 71 degrees, which is a temperature that we typically hit in August, not in late June. So I expect to really see a large increase in those days and those nights, especially here in Mid Cape.
I think it's great to
Yeah.
put that local focus onto it. It really, it brings it home, and it's very appropriate for what we're trying to do.
Thanks, John. Hey, Ron.
Yeah, I want to apologize for moving here in 2015 and bringing the Arizona heat.
That's okay. We don't.
The other thing, well, the other question is, warm water temperature means there's going to be more shark attacks, so be ready for that coming down. Well, maybe not attacks, but they're going to be there, and people are going to we'll get lots
They
of notice on that. So, yeah. Peter's going to see what the humidity data says.
Yeah, I mean, I'll
that
continue to paw through that and show how that has changed. Our humid days obviously are increasing as well. It's a little bit more extensive, but I will do that hopefully for next meeting. But the change in the short term, and going back to Barry's, how does this compare? Most locations in New England are seeing a rise. That is honestly one of the most dramatic that I've seen on such a short time scale. Remember, that's, an average. So, there are going to be years that are much more than that. Some years that offset that, but that is a pretty sizable jump, and kind of at the point where, you get into those longer stretches, the education component of it's going to be critical, especially in an older population that's from here that isn't used to it. That's all I got, Barry.
Okay, it's interesting. It got me to think. My parents, I think, first came to the Cape on the I guess it would have been the 1970s. And, you know, they had no air conditioning, then, you know, never had it. But, you know, they had health issues that I can see where, you know, it would have been problematic for them with this kind of heat.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, we never felt any need for air conditioning at all. Now we do.
Absolutely.
That's good. And then, you know, in terms of water temperatures, I assume you would probably see something similar, although not as spiky, maybe.
Yeah, so water takes longer to heat up and cool
Right,
off.
right.
Our trend that we're seeing globally is that the oceans now have seen their 2 hottest consecutive months on record continues, but the local anomaly is quite concerning. Again, that 71 is something that should wake a lot of people up. I mean, I saw people at Craigsville Beach swimming on Memorial Day, which is unheard of. And there were people actually just staying in and enjoying it, not just a
Right.
polar bear dive. So that 71 is shocking this early, which obviously brings in concerns with a very active hurricane season, which the pattern shows it'll be active. Whether one hits here or not is still in question, but we already have water temperatures that would help hurricanes thrive in this latitude, which we'll have to watch closely.
Last year, I think it was before Memorial Day, but I went with a friend of mine and we looked at historical water temperatures. So we wore our wetsuits, and then we got and we realized we didn't need them.
Yeah, not good.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Chris. That's really helpful. Yeah, and if you can continue to do that at future meetings, that would be great. And then we can figure out where to take it from there. So I don't have any more updates. Does anyone else, or anything else anyone wants to talk about? If not, we can discuss the agenda for the next meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Well, no, I think not yet. I think let's talk about the agenda for the next meeting.
Oh,
It may not be very long. So you know, I guess we'll talk about it. Let's see, when is our next meeting?
July 15th.
We'll have met with,
We're going to the once a month for July and August.
That's right. Okay, so we will have had our meeting with Brian Florence by then. Hopefully, I will get in touch with David Anthony to get an update about, you know, his activities. So we'll do that, and I think the food waste would, you know, I think we're going to at least touch upon that in the meeting with Brian Florence and John and Kelly. Perhaps you can give an update for, you know, what DPW is doing in this area, and have another delightful discussion or / presentation from Chris. That would be great. Very informative. Does anyone else have any other thoughts for the next meeting's agenda?
I can't think of anything else.
Okay. All right, Rob.
I made it. Waiting for a second.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Happy,
We're adjourned.
happy
This was a very efficient meeting.